So I wanted to speak a little bit about the strategies for practicing pieces. Uh, just really two matters that uh, I've been thinking quite a bit about in the last several years, and that is you don't want to practice certain sections and neglect other sections. So I think most people, when they're thinking of a piece or a concerto or something like that, in their mind, they're constantly like going through the beginning of the piece without the instrument. They're just, it's just something that it's like the statement of the work, really. And I feel like we're always practicing the openings of these uh, pieces that we play. So I'm in a bit of a habit actually to neglect practicing the openings of pieces as much as possible because those are like very artistic statements. Um, you don't want to necessarily learn just one way of playing them. You want to be a little bit um, agile when it comes to presenting the big openings of pieces so that you have different interpretations, different in the moment, in the performance, in the moment, decisions being made. If you practice them too much, I feel like you just get nailed down to one or two ideas and it becomes very plastic. So, what I'm suggesting that people do is, first of all, if you have passage work that repeats itself, so in the case of like a rondo or maybe the last movement of the Mendelssohn concerto, I think the subject matter I think repeats three times. So does that mean in a practice room, if you were to like spend a democratic amount of time, that means that one section will get played three times more than the rest of the piece, and that's just a really bad use of your time. And um, also, it strengthens one over the other, and it's like a relative strength. So you want to make sure everything is solid, of course, but you don't want to have one section that's just, oh, that person really knows that section really well, and oh, that person doesn't know um, that middle section at all, relatively. So I'm talking about. Um, it sort of starts. Goes on and on and on. So this comes back a couple times, three times, I think. And if I was to practice this finale, I would make sure I only practice that section once instead of three times. And also, in keeping with what I was speaking about, with sort of neglecting openings as much as you possibly can, um, just because your mind will be practicing these openings when you're just as you're washing your dishes or washing your hair. You're just going to be whistling those openings, and you're going to be sort of working out little details. They get a lot of attention already. So I'm in a habit of actually learning pieces. Um, I'll pass through the music sort of in order to get a sense for it, especially if it's a new piece that I don't know. And then once it's sort of in my ear, I practice the piece backwards. So that means every page, as it stands literally in front of you, just sort of like, okay, even if the phrase is broken up, I just kind of chunk it that way. Okay, practice that page for 10 minutes or so, and then work backwards, practice that page. And then, like I was saying, if there's a section that's a complete quote of another section, just uh, don't practice it twice. You'll have a lot more time on your hands if you do that. And with Western music, a lot of ABA type stuff going on with music, so there is a lot of time you can save just by um, making sure you're very democratic about how much time you spend for each section of a piece. So working backwards, neglect openings, and also don't over practice sections that repeat themselves. So 3 things. And this sort of became apparent to me in large part because I'd have students, and they, whether they love a piece or not, they'd come in, and the beginning of their presentation is so good relative to the rest of it. It was like this big diminuendo of ability. So I could tell they're just so much focused in the practice room on the openings and the first few pages or the exposition, and then um, all of a sudden you can tell they spent a tenth of the time on the rest of the piece. So it's good to sort of bring the whole piece up, bring the whole piece up in one motion. Make sure the quality is all there, so your foundation is just throughout the piece, and there's no one part that just seems like, okay, that person is completely able, and then this section is completely falling apart. And obviously, there's sections in pieces that require um, so much attention relative to the rest. There's these hard licks, so take that as a take for granted what I just said, because these sections that are just going to be a son of a gun, you got to put the time in those, of course. Um, and we could probably talk about strategies for attacking those sort of passage works some other time. But regarding the general preparation of a piece, take those 3 things to heart. So practice things backwards so you don't fall into the habit of only practicing the beginning of things. Don't repeat practicing sections that are quoted. And then also, the third thing was, I can't remember, but I've said it so many times, I'm sure it'll be understood. Okay,